Hi, everybody. It's Eileen Green from Market Share Communications, and I am so pleased to be here today with Kevin Perlmutter from Limbic Brand Evolution. And we're going to talk today about branding on our next episode of Meet the Experts. Good morning, Kevin. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. So thrilled to be with you today.
Well, we are thrilled to have you. I'm very excited for this interview. So I'm going to let you do your own introduction today. Tell us a little bit about you, your background, and how you came to start your business and what it's all about.
Well, thank you again for having me. I'm a brand strategy and neuromarketing consultant, and I have my own company, a brand consultancy called Limbic Brand Evolution, which I founded in early 2019. Before that, I did a variety of things. I spent many years at traditional ad agencies. I decided at a certain point that was no longer where I wanted to be. Brands can't keep making promises. They need to deliver on great experiences. So I moved to a brand consultancy called Interbrand, where I spent 7 years becoming a strategist, being a leader in the New York strategy group, founding and creating their first ever customer experience offering, which I scaled globally across all Interbrand offices, which was the perfect answer to leaving advertising for me. And then in 2014, I had an awesome opportunity to join a sonic branding music studio as chief strategist and ultimately chief innovation officer. And there I created a research capability rooted in neuroscience with an outside partner. I partnered with this awesome research company that does neuroscience-based research. We custom created a capability for the music studio to assess the impact and effectiveness of music and sound and other stimulus on our subconscious, and how that then correlates to understanding of emotion, takeaways, communication ability, brand preference, and also to conscious-based decisions and behaviors. So in 2019, I was like, wow, I really want to get back to brand strategy work across the whole of a brand. I want to get back to customer experience work. I want to bring all this neuroscience thinking into it and focus brand strategy exclusively on how you want people to feel. And that's where I am today.
So I'm fascinated because I love the name of your company. So just explain a little bit for people who may not know about the limbic part of the brain, how you came to name your company what it is.
Yeah, so you lighted on that, which I absolutely love. Limbic, the limbic part of our brain is all about emotion, motivation, behavior, and memory at the subconscious level, where many decisions get made in our body that are not conscious to us and trigger our behaviors. Some things we don't even realize, some things we ultimately spend some time thinking about and post-rationalizing. But the limbic part of our brain definitely relates to the area of focus for my practice. And I'm a very, you know me a little bit, I'm a very deliberate person, and every word matters, and I think things through. And when I decided to start my own business, when I decided to go independent, one of my first big decisions was that I wanted to create a company and a brand. I didn't want to go out as a freelance brand strategist. For me personally, having a brand was very much on brand for me. And when I thought about what the business was going to be about, and bringing this behavioral science, neuroscience-based thinking to brand strategy, that's my point of difference. I needed to also create a name for my company that was relevant. So every word matters, every detail matters. Limbic, I've explained why that's part of it. Brand, definitional. Evolution, I'm all about evolution. As you could tell by my career path and what I'm doing for my clients, everything I do is about building on what's there and making it better and improving. And I think evolution is also a core part of my DNA and how I approach my client work.
Fabulous. I love that. So you talked about the limbic and the evolution and the brand. So how do you share when a client comes to you or you meet somebody? There's a whole bunch of people out now that are doing branding. What sets you apart? How do you, what's different about how you go about branding for a client? And maybe share with us, some stories or case studies of things you've done for a client. You don't have to mention names if you don't want to, but just share with us so we know how your strategy and branding works that's different than everybody else's.
The key differentiator between what I'm doing and what most others are doing out there is that I'm focusing on emotion. I'm focusing on the intersection of emotional motivations of a brand and that of the people they're trying to reach. What I'm doing is I'm helping my clients focus on what makes them unique and desirable and what motivates them to do the work they do, what they're in the world to do to make people's lives better every single day, and helping them bring that out in a more expressive and motivating way so people get it and hear it and understand it and are compelled to be a part of it. What I'm also helping them do is understand the emotional needs and desires and motivations of the people who they want to reach. Because let's face it, people aren't walking around looking for brands to enter into their life. They're walking around looking to solve challenges, to be more successful, to be happier, to get more out of every moment of their life. And if they find a brand that helps facilitate that for them in some way, then that's going to be exciting to them. So I'm creating what I call limbic sparks, those moments when emotional motivation meet brand desire. And I'm turning emotional insight into a competitive advantage for my client by creating a strategic foundation that allows them to express themselves in ways that will compel people to be interested. So some examples. One of my clients, my first client when I launched Limbic in 2019 was the AT&T Performing Arts Center. They're a nonprofit in Dallas, and they have a large campus of performing arts center facilities, and they do the most incredible things in the community and bring lots of wonderful arts and entertainment to their stages. They were struggling at the time that I met them to for everyone to feel connected to the brand in the city of Dallas. They were a little over-indexing on targeting the wealthy. They weren't really getting the word out in a compelling way to other parts of the community, the more general population of families. They were doing a lot of incredible work in parts of the city that are underfunded and don't have access to arts and entertainment in the schools and things like that. And their tagline at the time was "Staging the Amazing," which was a very accurate tagline, well thought through, all of that. But unfortunately, it was taking them down the path of talking about themselves and how amazing everything was. And in the work that I did with them, I understood what their motivations were. I understood what people were truly feeling about their experience at the AT&T Performing Arts Center. And we transitioned them from staging the amazing to yours to discover. And it set the path for them to talk about discovery, how welcoming they are, all the things that you could do, learn, find, experience, how you could find a new career path, how you can, all of these things that really open their doors to people who didn't consider it to be a brand for them. One other slight example, just taking it to a B2B example for a second.
I was just going to ask you about B2B.
Yes, B2B is so important. And so much of the work I do is for small business owners and medium-sized businesses in the B2B space. And for them, sometimes it's, with the AT&T Performing Arts Center, it's going from about us to for you. But for some businesses that I work with, it's more simply going from what we do to why you should care. So a lot of businesses instinctively put out all of the services that they offer. And unfortunately, that's a bit commoditized in their space. So I worked with a small business owner recently and spent a lot of time understanding their motivations, what their team is like, the style of service that they deliver. And I also understood from talking with their customers what it is about this business that their customers find to be so compelling. Many competitors in the space do the same exact stuff, but what their clients love about them is the style of service, the values, the attention to detail, the respect for their time. And we're able to transition their whole go-to-market strategy, their sales materials, their website, their communications, everything they do is now rooted in what people love about this business and why people should care. And the secondary message is, oh, we do all the same things as our competitors, but the style of service takes the lead.
And that's really key with a lot of B2B. B2B companies often don't think about that. they just figure they're just another business out there in the business world, but it really does make a huge difference.
Yeah. And what I find so often with my clients is that the way they deliver their service is more desirable, more appealing, more compelling than the actual nuts and bolts of what they do. It's the energy they put behind their work and the satisfaction that their clients get by having these people making sure that their needs are met, and just knowing that they're there. And the work that I do for my clients is help bring out that energy, those stories, that idea, and that really creates a differentiating position for my clients in their marketplace.
Yeah, and I don't think a lot of, especially small and middle market companies, they think branding oftentimes is for the large enterprise companies that we all know. But the truth of the matter is, any company, even very small companies, can really set themselves apart by doing what you're talking about, by differentiating themselves. And we don't realize, I think a lot of people, even in the B2B realm, you buy through your emotions. Why do you pick one company over another? It's because you have some, you can't even name it, but you have some feeling about them that makes you want to work with them. And that's all the difference in the world. I want to share.
Before you go there, I just want to build on that just for a second, because
Sure,
you just talked about something that is so key, and I want to elevate it slightly.
please.
The most important question that I answer for my clients is, why should people care about your brand? Because we're indifferent to brands, and most people don't spend a lot of time caring. But if we can help our clients articulate why people should care, and they feel it, then they're going to be compelled to get more interested and come back.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. I read one of your blogs on your website called "How Strong Brands Embrace Emotional Insight to Drive Growth." And I loved it. So talk a little bit about that.
Well, my whole business is rooted around this idea that emotional insight can be the roadmap for more effective marketing and can drive growth for your company. And the fact is that how a brand makes us feel has the most impact on loyalty and future business. And that's been proven over and over again by the likes of Forrester and other research companies for the last decade or more. And that particular article was written in the last year. I forget the exact publishing date. It was published in Branding Mag, where I've published 9 articles over the last year and a half. But that particular article was related to a lot of the activity that was happening by certain brands, strong brands, during the pandemic, when they realized that they would need to evolve how they go to market to remain strong, and figure out ways to connect with their audiences based on the new needs, the new desires that they were having, because people's lifestyles got reprioritized, people's day-to-day routines got changed, their needs changed. And if a brand thought that their customers were just going to keep coming back for more in the same old scenario, a lot of them found themselves with customers that just disappeared because their routines had been broken. So this article highlights several brands and ways that they stayed connected to their customers. So for instance, the article talks about addressing emotional concerns as one example. If your brand is always focused on understanding the emotional needs and addressing the emotional concerns that your customers have, you're going to have a lot of positive impact and results. So the example in the article for that was Airbnb. And Airbnb, as you can imagine, when the pandemic hit, all of the renters sort of lost ground because nobody was traveling.
Right.
But as things started to pick back up, at one point when things started to pick back up before they went back and then back and back and forth. But at one point they were like, well, how are we going to get people back? Well, first of all, people were afraid of their reservation being canceled and losing money. So for a short period of time during the pandemic, Airbnb issued a no questions asked money back guarantee policy. And they were addressing the emotional concern of losing your deposit if the trip gets canceled by your government. Another way they addressed emotional concerns is they instituted a cleanliness policy, and they made sure that all renters were following the cleanliness policy so that guests would feel that there was a healthy environment that they were coming into. One other example of a brand that was doing things right during the pandemic is Chipotle. And they were doing, what they were doing was meeting customers where they were. Instead of people coming to the dining room, they launched a digital strategy that had been underway, and they accelerated its output, where they were actually hosting lunch parties where celebrities would show up at like 100-person Zoom meeting for anyone that had a Chipotle sandwich delivered to their house. They were also helping customers feel connected to the local community and showing their support for the local community with programs like Burritos for Heroes, where they were giving away free burritos to local healthcare workers for every burrito that was purchased. So you can feel like you were actually getting something done in your home.
Yeah.
Those are a couple of examples from that article, but the real emphasis of that article is making sure that people understand that if you address the emotional needs that people have, you meet people where they are, you champion core emotional aspirations, you help connect with people on shared emotional values. These are all things that a brand can do to be connected to its customers, no matter what's going on in the world.
That's great. And that's why I just, when I read that, it just really resonated with me.
Thank you for reading it.
Oh, you're welcome. I love reading your blogs and listening to your podcasts.
You.
And we're going to put up on the screen in a minute where people can get in touch with you. But, you started your business in 2019. So that must have been you were pre-pandemic. Then the pandemic hit. And how did you weather that? And what did you see that was different from when you started to when you got into the middle of the pandemic? And how were clients, how were you relating to clients, and what were they saying to you about their brands?
Yeah, it was a really tricky time. It was less than a year after I started my business. I was poised for a number of big projects in March of 2020, some of which went away. A few of them got stalled and then came back. But clearly there was a dip in momentum in my business that soon reignited, and things have been very good since. But honestly, what the pandemic did for me was it helped me find my voice as a brand, because I launched a business rooted in emotional insight, rooted in emotional intelligence that could drive brands forward and spark desire. And what the pandemic did was it gave me a voice. It gave me the talking points to help other brand leaders recognize the emotional challenges that people were having through this time, and that brands could not just sit still and think that the way they always went to market was going to continue to work. So I wrote a lot of articles like the one you mentioned, and several others that are all available on my website. And I posted a lot on LinkedIn how businesses can deal with the challenges they were facing as a result of the pandemic by focusing on what matters most to the people they were trying to reach, and adapting their business and their go-to-market practices and their marketing and their customer experiences based on an understanding of what matters most to the people that they care about.
And it almost seems like it fed right into your kind of branding and strategy that you work with. I mean, it was a crazy time, but really it opened up the door. I could see that opening up the door for you, because we were also emotional. And, I just read something in a trade magazine about the kinds of businesses that went down and went up during the pandemic. And it's so interesting to see how, and the word pivot became a huge word over the last 2 years, because some companies literally just business stopped. They were talking about all the businesses around travel and how, what do you do now? Luggage completely disappeared, and everything around travel disappeared, and masks and gloves and all kinds of other things just skyrocketed. So it was just an amazing thing to watch it happen. And then for people to come around to, like you said, business opened up and it closed and it opened. And I think we're all learning to adapt, but that said, you have to make your client or your customer understand why you stand out from everybody else. And
exactly. And it continues, even though businesses are more open than they were before, and we're not dealing with the back and forth of closures, and regardless of how you handle your life these days, we're back to life. We're going to businesses as much as we can, and but here's the thing: the challenges persist for businesses because there's been so much change. Technology adoption advanced incredibly. Entire industries have evolved more rapidly than ever before in terms of how customers want to be served by those businesses. Whether you're talking about doctors who now have to deal with a 40 times increase in telehealth desires from their patients, or you're talking about the restaurant industry where drive-throughs and home delivery and curbside pickup is a much larger percentage of their business than in dining room sales, and that will most likely continue at a higher level than ever before. The most recent article I wrote for Branding Mag is called "Why Yesterday's Consumer Insights Are No Longer Enough," and the topic in that article is all around understanding that the world has changed. And some things are not going backwards. And if you're a brand leader thinking that you know everything you need to know about your customers based on last year's data, you're a little bit behind. So
putting your head in the sand, really. If
you are putting your head in the sand and you're
Yeah.
hoping for things, hopelessly hoping for things to go back to quote normal.
Yeah. And this has happened over time. I mean, something catastrophic or incredible happens in society and it changes business forever
It
afterwards.
does.
And this
It
really,
does.
I think, is a huge thing. Anything else you want to share with our audience today?
No, I'm just so thankful that you had me on this Meet the Experts video. I'm I always love our conversations, and I'm glad we put this one together. So thank you.
So do I. Yeah, we put that on hold too, because we used to do them in person. We'd either go to a friendly expert or they'd come to our office, and we have, older ones that we look at now and say, gee, they seem so outdated. Everything's on Zoom now.
How inconvenient.
I know. Well, that's an interesting thing, how Zoom, talk about a company that became powerful overnight, literally. And imagine what our lives would have been like if this had happened, I don't know, 5 or 10 years ago. I think it would have been a disaster beyond anything we could even imagine. So
it definitely would.
I always say to people, as awful as this has been, I'm thankful. We're thankful for the fact that we are able to communicate and meet people and do business, and you have to really adapt. That's what it's about.
Yep.
So anyway, thank you so much. Tell us the name of your website.
Yep. So my website is limbicbrandevolution.com. And it's chock full of information on how I approach the work. It talks about limbic sparks. There's an emotional intelligence blog where there are tons of articles and podcasts that I've been on. And there's also the Limbic Sparks podcast page, which features podcasts that I do where I interview brand leaders who are turning emotional insight into a competitive advantage and are really, really great strategic brand managers. And I get their stories and understand how they're doing what they're doing. So.
And I encourage anybody who's listening to this to listen to Kevin's podcast, because they are great. So.
Thank you.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful. If anybody has any questions and wants to reach out to Kevin, you can find his information below. And I will see you again soon with another episode of Meet the Experts. Have a great day. Have a great week and be productive.